Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and I am very excited to bring you guys my first impressions of Destiny's The Taken King expansion. I've played it for 9 hours today, waking up right at launch and playing until just a few moments ago. Recorded a ton of footage, and I'm super amped to talk about it. Honestly, Bungie, I love you guys. I love you so much, and I just wanted you to recognize what you've done in the past when it's come to a lot of the mechanics in Destiny that just really haven't been there. Take a look at your history with Halo and say, hey, we can do that and we can do it good. And you know what? They have. So there's a lot to talk about with The Taken King, especially after playing 9 hours of it. But we're going to go ahead and start with the most prominent thing that was missing from Destiny in Year 1, in The Dark Below, and in the House of Wolves. And that, of course, is story, character, setting, cutscenes. You need these things, in my opinion, in almost every game to introduce the character to the world in a more direct manner. And when you have a first-person shooter that's so action-packed, like Destiny, it's very difficult to try and do what they did in The Dark Below and the House of Wolves and just kind of, you know, sneak story in with in-game character discussion. And I know this is true because I play in a fire team of 3 people, and out of those 3 people, I'm the only one who had any freaking clue as to what was going on in the House of Wolves. All that talk between Varix and everybody, most of my fire team just thought it was cool. Oh, Varix is funny. He says yes, very, you know, often he's a cool guy, but they didn't really know what was actually going on. This time around, Bungie kicks off the very first mission in The Taken King with an amazing and epic cutscene of proper Bungie proportions, the kind of stuff that I come to love and know inside of their days inside of Halo. You know, there's a reason that so many of us became so involved and attached to the Master Chief and Cortana and Sergeant Johnson and all of the other, you know, characters in the Halo franchise, and that's because they managed to represent them in gameplay and in cutscenes so well, and Bungie has finally managed to do that with quite a few of the characters in Destiny for the very first time, and that really excites me. I now can actually feel like I know Commander Zavala, and Akora Ray, and Cade, and even the Shipwright. They've done a really good job of bringing some characters that, for a very long time, sat at a table and once in a while gave you some good loot into a proper light. You know, they actually feel like personalities, people that I can relate to, and people that I'm happy to call fellow Guardians. So a bravo to that. I don't really want to spoil any of the story. We're going to talk about the story missions, we're going to talk about some of the boss fights, but we're going to try and keep as much of it under wraps as possible. And honestly, I'd really like to have you guys see that initial cutscene for yourself. But right after that cutscene, you travel to Phobos for your very first mission. And this mission, to me, was going to be very, very important to my thought process throughout the rest of my time with The Taken King. Luckily, it was probably one of the best, and it was probably one of the most well-crafted missions in Destiny so far. To start it off, we finally actually see a proper cutscene of our character being flown in our ship and then actually jumping out of the ship, being teleported to the planet's surface. We see the ship take off, something that we haven't seen for a while in a cutscene inside of Destiny. Throughout the course of The Dark Below and The Taken King, it was just nice to actually be like, wow, we're actually flying along a planet's surface. You know, give us that sense of atmosphere, have that cool cutscene, have our character jump out of the ship like we thought was going to happen every time we went into a patrol zone, you know? It was a small detail, but it meant a lot to me as a fan of the game and someone who wanted to see more interaction like this. And they actually carry through with that, because once you go ahead and actually end that first mission, your ship's waiting for you. You actually exit on your ship, you sort of make this grand, you know, exit after finally meeting with the Taken for the very first time and recognizing, holy crap, we're really, like, overwhelmed. This is no bueno. Like, we gotta be careful here. So that was really nice. And apart from the cutscenes, you know, actually delivering character dialogue, you know, they do a good job of just, again, giving the characters personality by allowing them to be quest givers. So all of the members of the Vanguard now, Cade, Akora, and Zavala, are quest givers, along with Eris. They all have quests for you that you can actually obtain, you can go out and complete. They're going to let you get equipment and loot, and they're going to help you continue to take the fight against the Taken. Even Amanda Holliday has her own set of quests that introduce you to boost patrols, as well as some Crucible-type specific challenges that will unlock future weapons. So they've just, man, they've taken every character in the tower and said, hey, you should be important, you should be important, you should be important, and they've actually made them important through the ability to grant quests to the player, quests that allow you to unlock really cool stuff. And of course, that's kind of at the forefront of the game, unlocking cool stuff, but we'll talk more about that later. Because throughout the course of the entire story, there was a lot of really great stuff done from a gameplay perspective. And again, I apologize, guys. There's so much to talk about. I'm going to try and stay on focus with this. I think we're going to make it happen, and hopefully you guys are going to see just why I love this expansion so much, and why I think it is a very, very good reason to come back to Destiny. So, starting with that very first mission, there was a lot of, you know, sort of pre-planned stuff that happened throughout that mission without ever me going into a cutscene. You know, ships crashing into the planet. They do a really good job of introducing the Taken. You watch them sort of sucking Cabal into this blackness, and it's all really wonderful. And the whole thing is kind of surrounded by some really great dialogue from the Ghost. Honestly, Nolan North did a great job. I love what they've done with his voice. What he reminds me of recently, I've been watching a lot of Star Trek The Next Generation, and he's sort of like our little own, like, AI Data. You know, I don't know, he kind of has that same sort of personality, except he manages to tell a lot more jokes than Data would ever be capable of telling. At least, you know, good jokes, unlike Data, who often tells very bad jokes when he does try and tell jokes. But I think they've done a good job with him. He feels very sci-fi, and he's a character that I've come to really enjoy listening to when we're out on patrol, when we're out on a mission, a side mission, whatever it may be. They've just done a really good job with him. But the other thing, gameplay-wise, that really stood out, there was two huge elements for me throughout the course of the entire story. Number one, the boss fights, of which there were many, and of which they felt actually very diverse. They managed to make sure that every sort of boss fight that you got into, you know, kind of had its own little niche. They weren't all, like, super different, and I think the big thing that really made them, you know, the fights in general stand out this time around is the Taken. The Taken have a lot of new abilities that really alter the way that you're going to engage those same old sort of humdrum enemies. You know, the Fallen, the Cabal, and the Vax, yeah, they're all kind of ultra badass now because they're Taken. And they do things like try and push you off ledges and blast you with, you know, vision-reducing bubbles, and they really try to mess you up. Just let that be known. But it was nice to actually fight a boss at the end of almost every mission. There was some baddie in one way or another who was trying to mess you up. And here's the crazy thing. You didn't always actually kill them. Sometimes they, like, left. Sometimes you had to retreat. There was just a huge amount of diversity. You know, they really mixed things up this time around. Every mission wasn't just go in, kill everything, and leave. You know, in fact, a lot of it was, holy crap, the Taken are crazy, man. We gotta bounce. We gotta go, like, cause we're gonna die. And within all of that, you start to learn a lot more about Eris. You get a lot of comedy from Cade. Cade is the Hunter Vanguard, and he is very much the comic relief. He's also sort of the let's just get things done, even if it means taking some really crazy risks, like, for example, stealing Eris's ship and attaching a prototype stealth drive to it, and then crashing it into the Dreadnought. That may or may not have happened. That is very much Cade. Sorry, small spoiler there. I don't think many of you guys will be sour about that one. But really, they've done a really great job. It's just the combat. I mean, for example, there's a huge portion where you're trying to escape the Taken. You know, Oryx has sort of showed up and like, hey, you man, I'm gonna murder you, here's my Taken. And they lock all these doors on the way out of an area that you've been in before, you know, Crota's tomb. And you have to use these tomb husks to unlock the door. And as you progress through the exit, they lock the door with a larger number of tomb husks. Eventually you have to capture all 3 tomb husks. It's just cool. Like, it's just, it doesn't feel, you know, sort of just shoehorned in. It gives the player an objective apart from just killing everything, and that's something that I feel Destiny could very much use. While the combat in the game is amazing, it always will be, I love the sort of combat loop and the way that you engage targets. It's nice to have an alternate objective apart from just shooting everyone in the face, and I think they've done a very good job in executing that throughout the course of the story. So, I mean, apart from that, you know, you got new locations in the story, you've got all the new gameplay. The Taken are a really fun new enemy. I love what they've done with them. Let's talk about length. You know, how long did it actually take me to complete the main story? Because I have actually finished it. I've, you know, sort of fought the final boss type thing, and I've since then moved on to the next set of goals, of which there are many. The game really does not end once you defeat the main story. And I'm not just saying that there's a bunch of endgame content. No, there's actually a bunch of missions, side quests, and challenges to do outside of the main story, because the Taken are still screwing everything up and you need to do something about that. And that's kind of how the game progresses after you complete the main story. But for me, on the normal difficulty, playing alone, I was usually out-leveling the main story's level greatly, considering I was a level 34 Guardian to start. It wasn't incredibly difficult. On normal difficulty, I would say about 4.5 hours, maybe even less. However, that 4.5 hours was really, really enjoyable. And for me, I'd rather have 4 hours of really enjoyable story and gameplay and, you know, awesome segments and cutscenes than 9 hours of something that is boring, dull, and just poorly crafted. So for me, I mean, the story alone was just like 3 thumbs up. They really did a good job with that. And like I said, outside of that, there's so much more to do. And what they've also done is they've given you 2 difficulty options for all of the story missions. So you have your sort of standard difficulty, normal, not really hard. You also have a difficulty that's going to require a light level of 240, which is the same light level that is required to do the weekly heroic strikes. It's pretty high. You're really going to have to beef your character up. You're going to have some decent exotics and legendary armor and weapons. You're really going to have to be stacked to go into that type of a mission. And honestly, the way that the story missions were designed and how much I enjoyed them, I look forward to going back and replaying them on that higher difficulty level and dealing with more enemies and, you know, that higher difficulty and being able to, you know, take less damage and so on and so forth. So I think that that really is indicative, I love that word, of how well crafted the story missions actually are. So again, 3 thumbs up there. Really love what they've done with that. Now, as I said, a lot of stuff is in the Taken King. I mean, it's huge. 9 hours in and I've barely scratched the surface. There are new weapons to be unlocked. I have, you know, all of the stuff in the Crucible to still muck about with. And there's a ton of quests and challenges. Right now, as we speak, I have 3 pages of incompleted quests. Some of them to take me to the new strikes. Some of them just for challenges to unlock new weapons. There's a huge variety of good stuff. To be done after you finish the main story, apart from endgame content. Of course, the raid doesn't release for another several days, so you have all the time to spend with the strikes, you know, try and unlock that loot, get your character's light level up to do the Nightfalls and the heroics. You can still go back, you can do Prison of Elders, you have the Crucible, but I think the big other juicy piece of goodness lies within the Dreadnought. So the Dreadnought is a new patrol zone, which is probably the coolest thing they've created in Destiny thus far in terms of just free roam type environments. Unlike the other patrols, you cannot use your Sparrow, which I'm fine with, and unlike the other patrol zones, the Dreadnought tries to kill you all the time, meaning that there are certain areas of the map that, number one, are locked. I mean, you can't even access them without completing some of the strikes and obtaining certain codes and keys and passcodes. I love that. Knowing that there's actually more to unlock in the Dreadnought is super cool. But there are literally chasms in the Dreadnought that have to be memorized because they have disappearing floor panels. So you have to know exactly where to jump from trial and error. And some people may look at that and say that's frustrating. But honestly, what I look at that and the first thing I thought as someone who's playing alone right now without my fire team was, I can't wait to come here with my fire team and completely be like, guys, I know the way. Check this out. And then, you know, run and jump and know exactly where those disappearing floor pads are. That would just be so badass, and I'd feel so much EP. It would be really awesome. So I actually like that. You know, I don't know, it lends to the pacing of how you traverse the Dreadnought. I think it's really cool. Of course, the Dreadnought is a patrol zone, so you have all of those patrol missions that you remember from vanilla Destiny. The ones that I hated oh so much. The ones that I always said, Bungie, you can do more with this. Well, guess what? They have. For better or worse, I think some people are going to possibly not enjoy them, but I think most of us really will. They genuinely expanded the patrol missions. For example, there's a lot of combat patrol missions now that are focused around the Taken, whether you're on the Dreadnought or on Earth or on Venus. It doesn't really matter where you are. They now have Taken that can be hunted down and killed. And they actually feel like fully fleshed out missions. It's not just like some brief little like, hey, kill a ton of these guys and get these supply codes. No, like, this is serious. You've got to fight a lot of Taken. And there's usually like a little boss, and they kind of kick your ass, and it feels awesome to actually have stuff on the patrols that is actually matched to the new level cap. Like, yes, So much yes. Now, I didn't actually get to see any of the patrols where I was able to increase the difficulty level, so I don't know entirely how that's going to function, when or if that's ever going to become available, but I guess we'll have to see in the future how that all goes down. So, what did we go over? We talked about the story, we talked about the characters, a lot of great new music for all of this. We talked about Ghost, love what they've done with that. You know, the gameplay has definitely been enhanced by the creation of the Taken by Oryx. Boss fight, awesome. I will say, I'm not going to even talk about the final boss fight in the story. All I want you to know is that it's great. It's probably one of the most creative boss fights that we've seen thus far, and it has me really hoping that the strikes have a lot of those cool elements as well. We've only seen one of the strikes thus far. I cannot wait to check out the other strikes that have been introduced, as well as the ones that have been revamped. Now, there's so much, honestly. I mean, we're not going to cover it all. I'm trying to talk about the important stuff here. And I think the last thing that we can talk about outside of Crucible, stuff like that, which we'll talk about in another day, is actually obtaining your new subclass. For me, as a Titan, Sunbreaker all freaking day, man. The new subclasses are legit. Now, I haven't got to play the other two, so I guess I can't speak for them, but if they're anywhere near as badass as the Sunbreaker, I am 100% on board. The Sunbreaker feels so freaking cool to use, man. You're just like, it's so empowering. Yet, once you actually go up against some serious Taken, you recognize that it's pretty much just a device that allows you to survive. And I dig that. I've also had the opportunity to use it in PvP a little bit, and oh yeah, it feels good. There's nothing quite like playing, it's just, yeah. Tearing people down with your flaming hammer of awesomeness is really great. But the real story behind the new subclass is how you actually go and obtain these subclasses. They have their own mission, which actually introduces some new story and lore. And I'm not going to talk about it. I really don't want to spoil it. Just know it's awesome. They've done a great job with it. Now, there is one last thing I need to cover. I really just want to touch on this briefly because, again, I'm trying not to spoil any of the story for anyone who is actually going to pick up and play Destiny after watching this first impression. But those side missions I was talking about, they've done a really good job with them. And some of them, including one, takes you back to old places like the Vaulted Glass, where you get to learn a little bit more about some characters that if you're a hardcore Destiny fan and a hardcore raider, you may have fallen in love with. You may have become a bit infatuated with their past. And you get to learn a little bit more about them. And if you want to make it super special, you can wear that armor that you might have gotten from the Vaulted Glass, even though it's excessively underpowered, just to pay tribute to these certain characters in the Vaulted Glass. And there's a lot more missions like that. To be honest, the Taken King has a lot of stuff in it. A lot of stuff that I haven't even touched yet. There's Sparrow Racing on the patrols. They're called boost patrols. Yes, that's a thing. Get your fire team together, do some boost patrols. They're actually a lot of fun. This is a huge expansion. This is a proper expansion. I am 100% okay that I paid $40 for this. This has put a huge grin on my face, and we haven't even talked about all the gear and loot, and I don't feel there is. Just know there's a lot of great stuff to unlock. There's new shaders, there's new emblems, there's a lot of stuff to be earned simply by completing missions and challenges. It's not just all RNG as Jesus praying. Bungie, bravo. You get 3 thumbs from me. Honestly, this could very much just be my review, because what I'm telling you at the end of the day is if you are in any way a Destiny fan and you played this game in vanilla, you played it in the House of Wolves, you stepped away, now is the time to come back. This is most definitely worth your $40. The amount of playtime that you're going to get out of this expansion is going to be huge. It's going to be huge. I think it's going to be more than enough to hold a lot of us hardcore players over. I mean, the people who play a lot until next year when Bungie announces what's next for Destiny. Do yourself a favor, pick this up, play it, grab your friends, and experience the Dreadnought, experience all of the new, honestly, just pure fun. That's really what I can say about the Taken King, is that from beginning to end of the story and to the point where I am now, the game has just been pure fun. It's put a smile on my face, it's introduced me to characters that barely existed in year 1. It's improved on the classic Destiny formula in so many freaking ways. Just a round of applause for Bungie. If you're someone who's brand new to Destiny, you kind of been hearing about the game, you see how many people are playing it, you're strong enough to look past all the haters, $60 is going to get you Destiny with all of the expansions. It's going to give you a boost to level 25. You're going to be able to hop right into the Taken King, and you are going to have a massive and wonderful world to explore. I strongly recommend it to players new and old. The Taken King. That's my thoughts on it. Hopefully, I'll see you guys bumbling about the Dreadnought at some point. Be careful. Those Taken, man. They're tough.